All right, so in this little video, I am going to be chatting to you guys about blood work and different functional tests to get done to help you to get to the root cause of your eczema. So you may be at different points. So you may have gotten a lot of the tests done, not sure what to do with them. You might be looking to start exploring to get some blood tests done. And you might just be at the beginning of your journey, not even sure if you should or whatnot. So a common picture that I see with people all the time is that they will have said, oh, I got my test done and my doctor said everything was fine. Or they're like, well, I went to the allergist. They say I have these allergies, but I still feel triggered by food. And P.S., not everybody's triggered by food with their eczema. But yeah, so that can be really frustrating because you can get these tests done and then your practitioner is saying, oh, everything's fine, but you're like, well, I don't feel fine. So I'll go through kind of the pros and cons of the different tests, the tests I suggest getting done, and kind of like the hierarchy of the different tests that I recommend. So let me know if there's anybody watching now or if you're tuning in later, if you've had any tests done or if you've had any experiences getting tests at doctors, or if you want to share some results as well. So I'll chat about that a little bit later too. Okay, so with eczema, it's multifactorial, right? There's all these different triggers and there's also different root causes, which can be really frustrating for people because they might be quote unquote doing everything right based off of maybe somebody else's success story. But the issue is that everybody's different and everybody's body's working different and you have different triggers, different symptoms. So we have to really base this off of you and what's happening inside your body. And I see so often is that people are trying to do the right things, but they end up wasting so much time and money on things that they don't need to be doing. And it's obvious if you are still caught up in a flare-up, what you're doing isn't working and you need to reroute. Okay, so getting blood work done, whether you're at a point where you've healed your eczema or whether you're knee deep in flare-ups, is just a good idea to get your biomarkers checked and monitor those. So I typically recommend to everybody to get your bloods done once every 1 to 2, max kind of 3 years, just to have an idea of what's happening biochemically inside your body. So we'll be chatting today about conventional blood work that you get from your GP functional tests, and then I'll also just like touch on some genetic testing as well. So with the blood work to start with, so this is a snapshot in time. So for example, if you have an infection, for example, with your white blood cells, then your white blood cells will be elevated because that's the army that's going to go and fight the infection. So if you have a cold or a flu, those will be raised. Or for example, if you're getting your blood glucose and it's fasting. So yeah, you didn't eat from the night before, but if you're really, really stressed and maybe you're late and you're running in, then your blood glucose will be elevated because of that cortisol spike. So you do have to take them all with a grain of salt. It's not the be all and end all. If something is really out of range, get retested. But that's really important to know as well. So each test also tells a different story. So if you go and get, for example, your blood work done, so for example, with eczema, so if you have an issue with salicylates or histamine, this isn't going to come up in your blood work. If you have a parasite, bacterial overgrowth, or candida, it's not going to come up in your blood work, although your white blood cells will be raised if you do have an infection. But also, this is kind of going down a rabbit hole, but okay, I'm actually not even going to go there. So that's a thing. And so you want to use each of these, like I always say, everything's a piece of the puzzle. So you want to use your blood work, and you want to use it in line with also if we have to go down the route of looking at functional tests as well. So, and it's also based off of the person that's interpreting them. So for example, with the conventional reference ranges, these are based off the population, the health of the population. So we know that the health of the population is declining. So also, I mean, it's different in every country, but also those reference ranges expands. So also not great, because well, you don't want to be in a situation where you're hovering, being out of range, right? So the way that we look at it in functional medicine and holistically is we have a smaller optimal range. So then that way, when I look at it, I'm like suboptimal, high or low. So ideally, nothing's like, there's nothing wrong, but we want to be in a more narrow range rather than hovering where you're going to diagnose disease and then you have to go in and take a medication, right? So that's the whole aim of the game with this, and also having somebody who's trained in diagnostics to be looking at this, to be looking at your blood work. And again, this is where you can go in and like the doctors are trained, like they're trained to diagnose disease and to address disease. It's not about prevention. That's where you have somebody who's like a nutritionist, a naturopath, and that's where they come in. So you have to be mindful of the lens that the person is who is reading them is looking at it through. So also you need to be the person looking at it, and it's good knowledge for you guys to know as well, is you need to be looking at the tests and the body as a whole. So again, another example is like if you go to a specialist, they specialize in that body system. They are an absolute expert in that body system. So they obviously don't know as in depth other body systems. So again, like if an allergist, you have allergies, but then we're like, well, you know, what's actually happening in your gut? Let's dig a bit deeper in that. So that's also handy to know. And also, for example, it's not just as easy as saying, let's say you had your iron or your ferritin that's out. So, you know, a doctor could go and say, okay, you have anemia, but is it iron? Is it B12? Is it B6 or folate? Because these are all, you need all of these nutrients to produce your red blood cells. So from that, you need to understand, okay, if I'm just taking iron, well, first of all, supplements matter. So I can actually do another training on supplements, which would be really helpful, because there's a dark side and a very light and like a powerful side to supplements, another story. But with like, yeah, going back to if you were diagnosed with anemia, okay, your iron's out, but then also what else could be affecting this? So for example, you might be taking iron, you might be taking one that's non-absorbable, which is prescribed by most doctors. You want to be taking an iron glycinate. That's a highly absorbable one that won't constipate you as well. And then you also, with the iron picture, okay, so for example, anemia, you dig a bit deeper, and then you're like, well, actually, it's based because I'm not getting enough B12. So you supplement with B12 and you get a highly absorbable one. But then you go back to you get your bloods done again, and you're still not, your iron isn't changing. So again, it's not the be all and end all. We have to keep digging deeper, which is what I always say. We always work upstream. Okay, well then if you're taking B12 and you're not actually absorbing it, then what's wrong? Then we look at your gut, because to be able, like B12 is the hardest to actually break down and absorb. So just in a food sense, you have to have enough HCl in your stomach to break down the protein in the meat. You actually have to be able to cleave it. And then you need to create this intrinsic factor to be able to absorb it, to get it across the cell wall. Anyways, there's a lot of different steps here. So it's not just as simple as looking at one blood or one biomarker and it's out. Okay, and if you guys have any questions along the way, let me know. Okay, so that's my little rant about the different tests. Okay, so I'm gonna start with the conventional tests. So so you can get these done from your doctor. You can also, there are now a lot of ones that can be sent at home as well, which is really helpful. But those ones do add up. They're between like $30 and $50 per test. So if you can go to the doctor and get these done, that's ideal. So, okay, the first ones, so the complete blood count. So you're going to be looking at your red blood cells and white blood cells. White blood cells so important because each of the different basophil, the eosinophils, your lymphocytes, your neutrophils, they all tell a different story. So we want to know which one's out. And for eczema, most people, if you have allergies, for sure, especially environmental allergies, your eosinophils will be high. So definitely those ones are always a marker that I want to look at. Same with your red blood cells. As well, I like to know if your iron's out and your ferritin. So again, what I just say is go across the board and let's get all of those done. So your iron, your ferritin, your B12, and your folate. And another one that I see out a lot is iron. Iron's a big one too. So the next one is the urine analysis, just to see what's happening with your kidney function, your electrolytes, very important. Your liver function as well. So the con about this one is that, and so there is a bit of a gap with some of the tests in this conventional blood list. So they test different enzymes, your AST, your ALT, your GGT, and what those are enzymes that your liver will produce if there's dysfunction. So your liver shouldn't be producing these, right? So again, this is when it's getting out of range, when there's issues. So it's a good place to start. So doing all of these conventional bloods is where I usually start out. So yeah, get those done, but don't look at those tests and be like, my liver's fine, because this isn't telling you about your liver function. It's just saying if you have fatty liver, right? So there's a lot more, and I don't even know which video I talk about liver detoxification, but it's in depth. You phase 1, phase 2, and then in phase 2 you have another slew of pathways. So anyways, the next ones that I recommend getting done is your thyroid function. So with eczema, there's typically a high stress picture with everybody. I don't like to say anything's 100%, but yeah, I'd say across or everybody I've worked with, and probably everybody these days in general. So your thyroid is your master regulator. So when people talk about metabolism, they think weight loss. When you talk about metabolism, it's your thyroid. It's your master regulator of your metabolism. So it is literally running every single function in your body. So this one's really important. And where there's a gap is in conventional medicine, they'll only test the TSH. So your TSH is your thyroid stimulating hormone. So your brain says, I need more of the metabolically active hormones, sends a message to your thyroid and says stimulate more. But this isn't measuring the metabolically active ones, which is your T3, which gets converted to your T4, and that's the one that roams around to all the cells in your body. So we really want to be looking at these two, but that's not, they don't look at that in the conventional world. So I always coach my clients on, yeah, what to say. Because also, like, I went through this as well when I thought I was having issues with my thyroid, and the doctor said to me, and like nothing against them because that's how they're trained. They're literally trained to say, if the thyroid stimulating hormone's out, then we give you thyroxine. So that's their tools in their toolbox. But then I said, for me, she's like, well, what are you going to do with these ranges? She's like, you have to pay extra for it. And then I said, well, I know that I need selenium, iodine, zinc, and did I say iodine? And to convert these so I can like use food as medicine and supplementation and like, yeah. So that is one thing. So with your TSH, I recommend getting your thyroid stimulating hormone, which you'll be able to get from the doctor. You'll probably have to pay a bit more to get your free T3, free T4, reverse T3, and then you can also get the TPO and you can get antibodies if there is a big picture of having thyroid dysregulation, hypothyroidism, or hyperthyroidism as well. And typically, yeah, if you have like chronic stress, that would lead to it. And then there's a whole slew of symptoms as well. So next ones will be hormones. Again, not the gold standard with blood work. You really want to be, for females, you want to be looking at getting yours done depending on your symptoms as well, but usually on day 21 if you're on a 28-day cycle. And the reason this is because your progesterone's peaked, and if you do have imbalance with your estrogen, that's when it would tell you. But again, and I'll talk about the other tests, this one it's not the be all and end all. If you get this done and you're still experiencing lots of PMS, heavy flows, then I recommend doing a more comprehensive one. Next test is your lipid panel. So cholesterol, your trigs, your triglycerides, your HDL, your LDLs. Again, this is a topic for another time maybe, but if your LDL is out, most doctors will just be like, stop eating saturated fat, or stop eating fat. And the thing is that your cholesterol, only, I think it's about 15% that's dietary. All of your sex hormones, your liver produces cholesterol, because all of your sex hormones, your testosterone, your estrogen, your progesterone, all of those are, your cortisol, are all produced from cholesterol. So again, it's the lens of the person that's reading the test from. So next one, another good one to be looking at is your blood glucose. So the gold standard is the HbA1c. So that gives you a snapshot over a 3-month period because it's attached to a red blood cell. So these are just all general ones that are just nice tests to have. And so these will all, for the most part, you'll be able to get them done by the doctor. At the end, I'll tell you the ones that are mostly out of range that I see with my clients, and I can give you a better picture. But I just thought I might as well share my knowledge on all of these for you, because again, when we're getting to the root cause, if one of these other parameters or biomarkers are out, that's going to impact your skin. So the last one would be definitely vitamin D. Again, this is one that's out always. And I don't want to give you reference ranges because they're measured in different units in different countries. But vitamin D, the reference ranges that are on the labs, when you're out, like, that is bad news. Like, my optimal range is quite high, because, it's funny because in like all my lecturers and naturopaths, and who've been doing this for years, they were always going on about like gut health before that there was any research. And so same with vitamin D, it was always a big one because vitamin D is a hormone, right? Not just a vitamin now. And they found vitamin D receptors in most cells. And so they've always harped on about the importance of these. So now it's not until, there's research, it goes into mainstream medicine, but it's cool that it's all being recognized. And now vitamin D with COVID is just like, the miracle, the vitamin/hormone. Anyways. So did I miss any? I tried to write. Yeah, no, those are all of them. Okay, so those are all the conventional blood tests. And if you go to the doctor, and it's different in every country as well, but for example, in Australia, the doctors it's regulated by Medicare. So they can't just give out every single test. So again, when you're going, and this is what I do with my clients, is suggest the tests that are actually indicated based off their symptoms, because the doctor they have to report and say why they're giving out all these tests, which, side note, we all pay taxes and we should have, all these tests should be accessible, but a topic for another time. So again, you can't just go in and ask for all of these tests because the doctor will put up a block. So from all of these, and if you have eczema, definitely your red blood cells and white blood cells, you'll be able to get those done. Oh, one I didn't talk about, your CRP and your ESR, those are inflammatory markers. The CRP is more short-term, more acute, and your ESR is more long-term because it's attached to a red blood cell. So those are handy to look at as well. Your iron and your ferritin, your B12, folate, definitely recommend those. Your vitamin D for sure. Those would be the top ones. Your urine analysis is handy, and usually doctors will let you get those ones too. And then if there is that chronic stress picture, really fatigued, look at your TSH. Actually, just, yeah, you do your TSH too. But then to get those other, the T3, T4, those ones, you'll probably have to pay, but I would recommend splurging for those. Okay, so those are the conventional ones. So the next are the functional tests. And so just like if you guys watch my webinar, the 3 ways to heal eczema, so it's kind of structured that same way. Like at the beginning, we want to set the foundations, right? So setting the foundations and looking at symptoms is really helpful. And then we move on to that next phase of really investigating what's happening. If you guys haven't seen that webinar, that one's actually really helpful. I haven't done that one in a while. So if you are interested, let me know in the comments below, just toss in webinar. And then I can put together, I can do that one again, maybe in a few weeks or something. Anyways, yeah, so with the functional test, so typically what I'll do with clients is, while we're setting those foundations at the beginning, is we'll look at the symptom picture. Because you can 100% get all these tests done at the beginning, but you will fork out a lot of money, like near thousands. So what I like to do is base everything off the symptom picture. And again, I'm always harping on about be in tune with your body, listen to your symptoms. I hate to always repeat myself, but it is a thing. And so then what we do is look at your symptom picture. Okay, so is it an issue with hormones? Okay, so are you getting cyclical flare-ups based on your cycle? And so your blood work came back. And there's a lot of things that you can do as well. And this is typically what I'll do is we can address using food as medicine supplements. We can address a hormone imbalance that way. And then if we're not getting any answers, then we dig deeper again, like peeling on the layers of the onion. So what you can do, if that is a picture, is look at the Dutch test. So this is a very comprehensive look at what's happening in terms of your hormones. So if you have a hormone imbalance, a lot of times this is gonna stem back to your liver. So what happens is it tests all the different metabolites of the detoxification of your hormones, and are they converting from one to another? Because if you look at how hormones are converted, there's a lot of steps. It's not just there's just estrogen or there's just testosterone. It has to come from cholesterol. Anyways, I won't go through all that. So the Dutch test is one if there's a hormone imbalance. Obviously, my favorite is the microbiome mapping. So this is one, again, where I see that there's always something that's out with people with eczema. And so what this does is it tests the PCR, so the DNA fragments of your good bacteria, and also any parasites, viral infections in your gut, candida and yeast, worms, all of it. So it's really cool to look at these results. I love it. And also there's different types here, but then there's some more comprehensive ones that will actually look to see what's happening in your poo. It's a poo sample. So are there different fibers that are coming out? It's also looking at the consistency and the color, and yeah, so this one I do recommend doing. There's 3 different ones. There's the GI map, there's the Genova, and then there's the GI 360. They range quite a bit in price, but if you are looking to go down this path, don't waste money at the at-home ones, because they're essentially going to tell you what you can identify by looking at your poo. So I also have another training. I don't know if it's in this group, what your poo says about you. You can get all that from that training. But this one is really, really helpful. And this one tells a lot. But again, yeah, you don't always need it. But it is really, really helpful. Like I said in numerous other videos, we've had some people who have had bacteria that produce histamine. We've had some parasites that were causing this like extra inflammation, because parasites, side note, kind of always try not to get too off track, but if you have a gut infection, so bacterial overgrowth or parasite overgrowth, they can produce endotoxins, which can create excess inflammation, and it can also create leaky gut too. So those are important to have a look at. So if you had those symptoms, I would definitely recommend getting these done. Other tests there that we can get done is the oats test. So that's an organic acid test. It's so sunny today. The sun doesn't come out much here in the winter. So the organic acid test is really good because that's, again, going to be looking at the metabolites of your fatty acids, of pretty much every function with your liver. So that one's really handy if we are looking at, more liver dysfunction. So again, I'll usually base that one off of symptoms. If we haven't been getting results from the beginning, then we'll dig deeper and look at this one. Other tests that we can get done as well, if we're thinking that mold is an issue, there's mold toxicity one. You can even, if we're suspecting some heavy metals, which heavy metals, if you, and again, as like hidden infection or hidden root cause, heavy metals is one as well, because if you, for example, have high mercury, that's going to throw everything out. Your liver isn't going to be functioning. And again, if we think of your skin as the backup elimination organ, you have your liver, your gut, your kidneys. If there's a kink in the hose, it can come out through your skin. If you have an issue with mercury, again, that's if you have an issue with mercury, that's going to affect your liver detoxification, and then that's going to affect the way that you're breaking down and metabolizing salicylates, histamines, and healthy and nutritious food. So did I miss any of the functional ones? You can also do micronutrients as well, which is quite interesting. I don't usually suggest those ones. I can usually tell with nutrient deficiencies based off symptoms and also diet. So some people are very objective and they like to have these tests done. So by all means, like, I love looking at all these. So I'm like, cool, if you want to grab all the tests, definitely good. But yeah, so those are the functional tests. And so these ones you can't get from your doctor. So I have different pathology labs in the States and in Australia that I use. So definitely, yeah, you need to get your practitioner to order these ones, and somebody who's also trained that can read them, because they are quite complex. Okay, so again, going through the order of peeling back the layer. If still not getting any results, then start looking at nutritional genomics and genetic testing. So this one, again, if somebody is really interested in it, they can do it at the beginning, but it's usually I've only done it a handful of times with clients, but it is so interesting because this isn't just a 23andMe. So what it's doing, it goes deeper, and it actually looks at the genetic SNPs in terms of your detoxification. So it's looking at like how you're utilizing different nutrients in your body that can affect your liver, that can affect hormones, definitely fertility. So these ones are pretty cool. And like, as a side note, I do see a lot of people with the MTHFR genetic SNP. And for example, I've had my MTHFR done and I don't have a genetic SNP, but I have a subset of it. So for me, I can't actually metabolize B12 efficiently on my own, because like I said, when you have B12, it's not just the form that you take in a supplement or that you get from food. There's so many different biotransformations within your body until you can actually use it. So for me, I should be better at supplementing it. So that's actually really cool just to see, just in terms of like general health, or if you're having issues getting to the root cause. Okay, so I wasn't meaning to go this long. I was hoping to get this done in like a 10-15 minute video. But okay, so just to recap, the main ones that I see out a lot are the your vitamin D, your iron, ferritin, B12, white blood cells for sure, red blood cells, the inflammatory ones, the CRP, and then also vitamin D, if I didn't say that one. So those would be the main ones that I would suggest getting from your doctor. Of course, if you can get your urine analysis, liver function, the doctors are usually pretty good at doing that, especially if you haven't had them done in ever or in a couple years. That's just quite routine to get those. And then you can also get your, I didn't mention that before, magnesium, zinc, and if you are thinking there's an issue with your thyroid, you can get selenium and iodine as well. So I do recommend doing that, especially if you want to be supplementing, because zinc you can't be supplementing for long periods of time, and there is an upper limit in terms of toxicity. So we want to understand where you're at in that sense, when we're looking at the holistic big picture. So those are the main ones. And again, another one is your microbiome mapping, the gut. I usually address that a little bit later on. So in general, to wrap everything up, there isn't one test. So as we've seen, they've all kind of tell a different story. And while all of our body systems are connected, it's really about getting in tune with your body and understanding which body systems are kind of imbalanced. So I always harp on, be in tune with your body, listen to your symptoms, what your body's trying to tell you, because it is a thing. So when you are, if you feel really discouraged that you've had these tests done, and that nothing's come back out of range, which good thing, but it just could be because somebody hasn't been looking at it they've been looking at it in disease, with the lens of disease rather than optimal function, and also connecting the dots of the different body systems. So the tests as well don't look at nutrient deficiencies, which is definitely something that I address right away, especially if you've been on an elimination diet, which most people that I've worked with have been yo-yoing through diets for years. So that's something you want to be looking at first, that these tests don't show you. And that you can also get false negatives too. Candida for sure, I say that all the time. But yeah, that's pretty much all of it. So let me know in the comments if that was helpful. And let me know if you guys have any questions. Always happy to get nerdy and answer your guys' questions. Also, if it is helpful, I can put together, I have a little PDF that I give to members in the Love Your Skin program of the different tests. So I'd be happy to share that if that would be helpful for you guys. So drop in the comments below a handout if that would be helpful. Otherwise, I'll wrap that up now. Hope that was helpful, and shoot through any questions, and I will chat to you guys soon.